You survived the breakup, but something's still off. You're eating, working, existing, but deep down, you're not okay. And you can't explain it. It wasn't physical abuse. She didn't hit you, she didn't scream, but somehow, it feels like you've been hollowed out from the inside. This isn't just heartbreak. It's something deeper. It's as if your nervous system got rewired, as if your soul is stuck in a loop it didn't agree to. You find yourself thinking about her in moments of silence, not because you want her back, but because you're still trying to understand what the hell happened. She wasn't all bad. She was magnetic, emotional, complicated. The kind of woman who made you feel alive and confused at the same time. You told yourself she was just different, but now you realize that difference came at a price. The truth? Not every woman leaves bruises you can see. Some leave patterns in your nervous system, beliefs in your mind, scars in your spirit. This video is not about blaming women. It's about helping men name the kind of woman who doesn't even know what she's doing and still wrecks you emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. Because if you don't understand what just happened to you, you'll walk right back into it again. Let's start where it all begins. Not in her words, not in her looks, but in the slow way she changes the way you feel about yourself. It never starts with a slap. It starts with a look, a silence, a comment that makes you second-guess yourself. You tell a story. She says, "That's not how I remember it." You make a joke. She goes quiet, and you feel guilty for making her feel weird. Little things, barely noticeable, but each time you adjust, you shape yourself to avoid the tension, to keep the peace. What you don't realize is, you're not choosing anymore. You're adapting. Her moods become your compass. Her silence becomes your punishment. And without knowing it, your nervous system begins to anticipate, not connect. You don't say what you really think. You soften your edges. You rehearse conversations before having them. All because you've learned, on some level, that being fully you isn't safe around her. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But here's the twist. She's not conscious of it either. She doesn't know she's doing this to you. She just knows she feels safer when you're more compliant, when you're less wild, when you're easier to control. And that's what happens. You stop being a man with presence. You become a man with a checklist. Don't upset her. Don't disappoint her. Don't speak too boldly. Don't call it what it is. You become a man walking around himself. And the saddest part? This doesn't feel like abuse. It feels like love, like compromise, like growth. But it's not. What's really happening is emotional rewiring. Your instincts are being dulled. Your clarity is being clouded. Your masculine core is being blurred to keep the peace with someone who never had peace within herself. And the more you adapt to her storm, the more you forget you were ever the sky. There's a kind of woman who doesn't love quietly. She's intense, electric. She pulls you in like a tide. Every conversation feels important. Every glance, heavy with meaning. When she cries, it's poetic. When she's angry, it's powerful. When she's affectionate, it's overwhelming. You mistake this intensity for depth. You think she feels everything so strongly. She must love deeply. But what if that's not depth? What if it's volatility wearing perfume? Jung called this the Anima, the inner feminine image every man carries unconsciously. When it's not integrated, you don't see her. You see your projection. You don't fall in love with a woman. You fall in love with the part of yourself you've refused to meet. You call it soul connection. But it's just chaos you've romanticized. You confuse emotional instability with emotional openness. You start believing that love is supposed to feel like walking a tightrope. That if she isn't unpredictable, it must not be real. That calm is boring. That peace means something's missing. So you stay. Even when the love feels like fire and ice in the same day. Even when her affection flips into silence with no warning. Even when you're constantly decoding her moods like it's your job. Why? Because you've convinced yourself that this is passion. That this is what deep love looks like. But real depth doesn't leave you doubting your worth. Real depth grounds you. Dizu. It doesn't shake you to pieces. Her chaos didn't make her deep, it made her unstable. But you called it intense because it mirrored something inside you. You weren't in love. You were in projection. At first, you thought you were just being patient, understanding, supportive. But over time, you started making small trades. You gave up certain opinions to avoid arguments. You stopped expressing parts of yourself that made her uncomfortable. You even laughed less, because your joy made her feel insecure. Piece by piece, you chipped away at yourself. Not in one dramatic moment, but in a slow, silent fade. That's how it happens. The collapse of a man's identity rarely starts with an explosion. It starts with the decision to make her okay at the cost of your own center. You became the emotional regulator, the fixer, the stabilizer. When she broke down, you held her. When she lashed out, you rationalized it. When she withdrew, you chased. And when you finally felt something wasn't right, you silenced that voice. You told yourself, she's just going through something. Or worse, maybe it's my fault. This is what Jung warned about. When a man loses touch with his inner structure, the feminine energy around him doesn't harmonize, it overwhelms. The woman isn't doing it maliciously, but the more unsure you become, the more control she reaches for. And it becomes a loop. You abandon yourself to keep her close, and she loses respect the moment you do. Masculinity without direction is vulnerability in disguise, and not the kind of vulnerability that builds intimacy. The kind that invites chaos. You begin to forget who you were before her, what you stood for, what you believed in. You remember being more confident once, more grounded, but now you're not even sure what's real anymore. Her mood becomes your truth, her validation, your oxygen. And the man you once were, still alive, but buried. You didn't lose her. You lost yourself trying to keep her. It starts with a comment that feels off. You raise a concern and she flips it. Suddenly, you're not upset because of what she did. You're upset because you're too sensitive, or misremembering, or overreacting. You walk away confused, not angry, just unsure. Not certain of what happened, just certain it was your fault. That's gaslighting. Not always loud, not always cruel. Sometimes it's soft, so soft you almost believe it's care. You catch her in a contradiction. She shifts the story. You point out the pattern. She accuses you of being controlling. And so, over time, you stop speaking up. You stop trusting your own perception. You internalize the idea that peace means silence. You mistake confusion for humility. And self-doubt becomes your default state. This is where enmeshment begins. Her feelings become your responsibility. Her sadness, your mission. Her insecurity, your fault. You're not just in a relationship, you're in a merger. You think you're being loving, but what's really happening is that your nervous system is no longer yours. You're scanning her for cues, reacting to her shifts, anticipating her storms, and calling it love. But this isn't love. It's fusion. And fusion is the death of clarity. Jung warned us, when two unconscious people come together, they don't relate. They collide. They confuse need for connection, control for care, and survival for love. The tragedy? She may not be doing this out of cruelty. She may not even realize the damage. But that doesn't make it less real. Because whether she meant to or not, she pulled you into her storm and called it intimacy. Now you no longer trust yourself. And without that, you don't know how to leave or how to stay. You just know you're lost and too tired to explain why. When she leaves, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like collapse. Not just of the relationship, but of something deeper, something inside you. You thought the hard part was loving her, but it turns out the harder part is healing from her. There are no bruises, no scars. Nothing you can show anyone, but everything feels off. You wake up anxious, you overthink basic decisions, you replay conversations in your head, looking for where it all went wrong. And the worst part? You miss her. Not because she was good to you, but because your system got addicted to the chaos, the late-night arguments, the unpredictable affection, the highs and crashes. You hated it, but it kept you emotionally activated, and now without it, you feel empty. Not peaceful, just quiet. And that quiet feels unbearable. This is what they don't tell you about toxic dynamics. Sometimes the person who hurt you the most is also the one your body misses the most. Because she didn't just take up space in your life, she rewired how you feel safety. and now safety feels unfamiliar. Stillness feels like something's wrong. Calm feels like absence. You were trained to live in fight or flight, and when she left, she took the fight with her but left the damage behind. The exit wound is real. It doesn't bleed, but it echoes in your habits, in your reactions, in the way you now relate to every woman after her. This isn't just about heartbreak. It's about untangling from someone who lives inside your nervous system long after they're gone. You want answers. You want her to admit what she did. You want her to see the pain she caused. You want closure. But here's the truth no one tells you. She may never understand. She may never see it. She may never apologize, not because she's evil, but because she may not be capable of self-awareness. She didn't just gaslight you, she's gaslighting herself. So if you're waiting for her to validate your pain, you'll wait forever. Healing doesn't begin with her apology, it begins with your decision to stop making her the center of your story. You weren't weak for staying. You were loyal. You were hopeful. You believed love could fix what trauma created. But here's the brutal truth. You didn't just stay because of her. You stayed because a part of you felt like that's what you deserved. That's where the work begins, not in analyzing her, but in facing the mirror. Why did you tolerate that much confusion? Why did you ignore your gut for that long? Why did you trade peace for proximity? This isn't about blaming yourself, it's about reclaiming yourself. Because the moment you stop trying to fix her, you start remembering who you were before her. You start asking better questions. You stop arguing with her story and start writing your own. And you realize something else? She wasn't the lesson. You were. You were the one who broke your own rules. You were the one who gave away your power. And now, you're the one who can take it back. This isn't about healing to become lovable again. It's about healing because you forgot you already were. She took something from you, but not forever. You lost your sense of self, but not your soul. And now you stand at the edge of something most men never reach. Awareness, not of her, of yourself. Because this pain isn't the end. It's the beginning. The moment where you stop chasing closure and start building clarity. You're not here to become harder. You're here to become whole. And wholeness doesn't come from guarding your heart. It comes from grounding your soul. So let her go. Let the story end. Not because she deserves peace, but because you do. You were never meant to be her emotional container, her savior, her mirror. You were meant to be your own foundation. Now it's time to return to yourself. To the man you were before she started rewriting your nervous system. To the man who didn't apologize for his truth, who didn't shrink in the face of confusion, who didn't need chaos to feel alive. You were never broken. You were just bending around someone who couldn't hold you. Now it's your turn to stand up straight and stay that way. And if any part of this spoke to you, you're not alone. Leave a comment below and tell your story. Not for attention, but because someone else might need to hear it. Like the video, subscribe, share it with the friend who's still stuck in her storm. This isn't just a video, it's a doorway back to yourself. And you're ready to walk through it. If this spoke to something deep in you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment and share your story. You never know who needs to hear that they're not alone. If you felt seen, hit the like button. If you want more content that goes beyond surface level advice and into the real work, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. And if you know a man who's silently going through it, send this his way. This isn't just content. It's a mirror. And sometimes, that's where the healing begins.